I was walking along the busy streets of New York one chilly evening when I noticed a large crowd gathering near a big square. I did not know what was happening until I heard a strange voice echoing through the night. At first, it was soft, but soon it grew louder and more commanding. My heart began to beat faster as I inched closer, drawn by a mix of curiosity and dread. Pushing my way through the throng, I reached the center of the square and saw a large stage under harsh, bright lights. Standing on the stage was a man I recognized all too well, Donald Trump. But something was terribly wrong. His usual features were twisted into a sinister mask. His eyes glowed a deep red, burning with an evil light, and his smile was harsh and cruel. It was as if he had become something not quite human, something dark and dangerous. He started to speak in simple, plain words that somehow carried a deep, eerie power. I could not explain why I felt both drawn to and repelled by him. His voice was hypnotic, and every word seemed to pull at the strings of my mind. I looked around at the people in the crowd, and as I did, I saw that something unsettling was happening. Faces that once were normal began to twist into expressions of fear and malice. Eyes lost their warmth and became wild, unseeing, as if controlled by an unseen force. My heart pounded as I realized that the power of his speech was affecting everyone around me. I tried to move away, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. The more I struggled, the more I felt trapped in a nightmare. I watched in horror as the people surrounding me started to change. Their skin began to pale, and a cold, dead expression took over their features. Their laughter, once warm and human, became harsh and empty. I knew in that moment that I was witnessing something beyond normal human change, a dark transformation. Trump's voice filled the square, repeating words over and over in a rhythm that felt like a spell. With every word, it was as if an invisible thread was tightening around our hearts and minds. I felt my own thoughts slowing, as if a heavy fog had descended upon my mind. All around me, the crowd moved like one living, breathing entity, each person losing themselves to the strange power of his speech. As I stood there, frozen and terrified, the night around us grew even darker. The lights of the city flickered, and a cold, misty fog began to crawl up from the ground. Shadows danced on the walls of nearby buildings, and I could almost hear whispers in the air, whispers that spoke of things too terrible to name. The whole scene felt like a bad dream come to life, a nightmare from which I could not wake. I took a deep breath, trying to gather enough courage to move or speak, but every breath felt heavy, as if I were inhaling darkness itself. I looked at the crowd again, and I saw that many had lost all traces of their humanity. Their eyes were empty, their faces twisted into monstrous forms. It was as if the very soul of the city was being drained away, replaced by something cold and unforgiving. I could feel a strange pressure in the air, like the weight of countless eyes watching me. Even when I tried to look away, I sensed that those eyes were on me, watching, judging, and waiting. In that moment, I understood that this was no ordinary speech. It was a dark ritual, a spell meant to transform every person present into something unrecognizable. I could do nothing but stand there, paralyzed by fear and unable to tear my eyes away from the horror unfolding before me. Every word Trump spoke felt like a drop of poison, slowly infecting the minds and hearts of the crowd. I felt my will slipping away, and I knew that if I did not find a way to break free, I too might be lost to to the darkness that was spreading like a curse across the square. I am left here now, in this cold, shadowed place, my mind filled with fear and my heart pounding with terror. I do not know what will happen next, but I know that my life will never be the same again. After escaping the cursed square, I ran down the dark streets of New York with fear burning in my veins. The echo of Donald Trump's hypnotic voice still haunted me as I desperately searched for shelter. Every step I took felt heavy, and the night air was cold and damp. I could see no sign of any safe haven, only abandoned buildings and empty streets. I knew that if I did not find help soon, I might lose myself to the dark spell that had turned a crowd into monstrous creatures. I turned a corner and spotted a small, run-down building with a broken door. Hoping to find refuge, I pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the building was silent, dust motes dancing in the weak light from shattered windows. The air was thick with a smell of decay. I moved cautiously through narrow hallways, listening for any sound that might indicate I was not alone. In a room at the end of a long corridor, I discovered an old table scattered with yellowed papers and newspaper clippings. They told stories of strange happenings and mysterious curses in New York from years past. I read about a dark ritual performed by an unknown cult, a ritual that had been repeated through history whenever a leader with wicked power arose. It struck me that Trump's speech was not a random act. It was a part of this ancient curse. My hands trembled as I held one faded article that mentioned a counter-ritual. The article said that the only way to break the spell was to gather the strength of true humanity, to remind the cursed souls of what it meant to be alive. My heart pounded with hope and terror. Could I be the one to save the city from this nightmare? Before I could think more, I heard heavy footsteps echo outside the room. I looked out the small window and saw several of the transformed creatures roaming the street. Their eyes glowed dimly in the dark, and their movements were slow but determined. It seemed they were searching for more victims, or perhaps trying to bring more souls into their cursed state. I knew I could not hide forever. With a sense of urgency, I grabbed the articles and stepped back into the corridor. I needed to find a way to perform the counter-ritual. The papers mentioned an old church on the outskirts of the city that might hold the secrets needed to undo the curse. My mind raced as I decided that I must journey there, even if it meant facing the transformed beings head-on. I left the building cautiously, the night seeming even darker than before. The once familiar streets now looked like a maze of shadows and danger. Every corner held the possibility of encountering those cursed souls. I moved quickly, clutching the newspaper clippings in the hope they brought. The cold wind whipped at my face as I made my way through deserted alleys and silent parks. My journey was filled with moments of terror. At times, I heard low murmurs and a sound of slow footsteps following me. I felt eyes on me in every dark corner, and every sound sent chills down my spine. Yet, I pressed on, driven by the belief that I could reverse this horror and restore the people of New York to their true selves. As I reached the edge of the city, I saw an ancient church looming in the distance. Its dark silhouette under the moonlight promised answers. With fear and hope, I stepped forward alone